Welcome to SoulWhat, a Soultopia production. Every Tuesday, Michelle and Roger Welch take a deep dive into the intriguing and proactive world of metaphysics, a world beyond our human perception. They'll talk to empaths, readers, and other guests from all walks of life to find out what's hiding under the surface, uncover the mysteries of our modern world, and reveal the answers you need to live a happy, healthier life. Now, here's your hosts, Michelle and Roger Welch.
Hello, we are back. Are you happy to be back, Roger?
Yeah.
So tell us everybody why we missed.
So we actually have been going the last 2 weeks. We were up in the Northwest Portland area, and we were at Newt's. It's the Northwest Tarot Symposium. It's a very long weekend of a very in-depth talks, discussions about tarot, oracle, divination, witchcraft, pendulum work, some of everything up there.
A little bit of everything this time, right?
Growing and growing, yeah. We were packed out. We were growing and growing.
That didn't sound like growing and growing.
Yeah, but it's getting. We sold out. We ran out of space.
Yeah.
We had more and more people wanting to come and had no more space for them.
So what we did afterwards was go. We instead of enjoying the beautiful day when we were there on Tuesday or Monday, we went and went to hotels.
Scouted a couple of hotels for next year.
Yeah, so it was great. Matt.
Yes.
You were with us. Did you?
I was.
Have a good time?
I had a very good time. It was busy, and I didn't get to. I had wanted to go see the city a little bit more because I'd not been to Portland before. Didn't really get to do that, but I did get to meet a lot of really cool people, hang out with a lot of the cool folks from around here, and met a lot of new people, and I'd say made some new friends, and so I'd say that's probably a successful trip for me, and had a lot of fun on Co-Creators Day, and had a lot of fun doing that, and then just kind of hanging out with seeing half the presenters because we had a couple of different rooms running, so I was usually in one or the other, but
you worked hard.
It was very busy, but I mean everybody worked hard. It wasn't just me, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a good looking hat, Roger.
I've got a question. I was about to ask that, you guys. Did you plan? Because I didn't get the memo on wearing this Bigfoot Sasquatch hat. You guys, I knew y'all were kind of getting to know each other, and getting to be talk about. You're trying to talk him into buying a drone.
Well, no, he left the day before we did.
Yeah.
It just happened because it was in the airport. And we were running because we were like, I'm starving. I got to eat before I get on that plane for 5 hours. So we went down, ordered food, and I was like, I'll be back in a minute. And I ran down and got the hat.
Is that what you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, well, it was, there's actually, in the Portland airport, there's a lot of cool stores that sell a lot of neat stuff in there. I think versus some other airports that I've seen, they have a lot of unique regional stuff there.
Yeah.
And so, this was from a store that had a lot of, I think it was called Made in Oregon or something like that.
Did you tell Roger to go find it?
No. I saw it.
And there was two choices, too. There was the green one and a black one.
Oh, y'all are really insane.
Insane. I had to get something. Like I said, I didn't go to the city, so I was like, I got to get something before I leave. I had 2 hours. I got there early.
Yeah.
And I saw that. They also had a Pendleton store there, which I like their stuff. The wool. I have one of their sweaters. Yeah. The classic Lebowski sweater is what comes from them. And so I've got that one, and I was like, oh, let's go there. Of course, everything there is $200-$300, so I wasn't going to do that. But I did like looking around at that. But when I saw this, I said, this is nice, understated. Didn't have a lot of text on it. I was like, this is the one I'm going for. And Roger walked in today, and I was like, that's a good looking hat.
Yeah, y'all totally planned. Well, you guys, we're so excited. I probably always say that about our guests, but I really mean it this time. Matt teaches me how to be better on podcasts. Was that good?
I don't know that that's what I would have said, but
I think you would have started out differently. But no, we love all our guests, but I'm really excited to have Devin Hunter on, you guys, from San Francisco, California. He is the best-selling author of the Witch Power series, The Witch's Book of Power, The Witch's Book of Spirits, and The Witch's Book of Mysteries, by Llewellyn, or published by Llewellyn worldwide. That was from 2016 to 2020, as well as the critically acclaimed pictorial formulary, Modern Witch. Roger, I think you have that one over there. Modern Witch Spells, Recipes, and Workings, Llewellyn 2020. We've had that in our store here at Soultopia. Initiated into multiple occult orders himself, Devin is the founder of the Sacred Fires tradition of witchcraft, as well as co-founder of the Black Rose tradition of witchcraft. In addition to his AV Club and Glamour magazine favored podcast, Modern Witch, Devin has been seen on television shows like ABC's To Tell the Truth, and is expecting in about 2 weeks, I think he can correct me if I'm wrong, the release of his 5th book, Crystal Magic for the Modern Witch. And here we have it, because we are special at Soultopia. We have the book right here. Hello, Devin. Thanks for being on SoulWhat.
Oh, I think you're still. Oh, you're
Oops,
still. There
I
we
was.
There we go.
I fixed it. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I've been a big fan for a long time. I'm glad we got to do this. And I have also been hearing about y'all in the scene for a long time. I had a friend come to me when we had our shop open, and he was like, "Do you know these Soultopia people? You need to go check out this store. The store's amazing. They're going to blow your mind." And I was like, okay. So, of course, I stalked y'all when we had the shop, and I was like looking at your photos, and I was like, how can I do what they're doing? But you can't, because you're doing something really incredible. So I'm honored to be here. I'm very excited to be here. And thanks for taking the time to have me on.
Oh, well, we're happy that you are on. And like I said at the beginning, we have quite a few authors on. But the reason I said that, not only because I love the group of people, and you can explain that, but Matt, Chaz, who was at Dallas? Storm,
Storm
and
came to
now
Dallas.
you, Devin. And I was telling Matt, our producer, how great, and I don't know, Matt, how much you got to talk to Matt Orwin, but he's just such a great guy too.
Not much. Yeah.
So I think he's going to be coming on in a little while to talk about his new book. But today is all about you, Devin. So I also was excited to have you on because I love crystals. I am one of those crystal people, kind of think love and light kind of people, but then they get to know me and they're like, oh, I misjudged. Or, right?
So you're not all love and light. Yeah.
Well,
That's what Matt told me. I'm just going with what Matt said.
So, but I love, and it's, I want to talk about the book because when you're a big crystal person and you know a lot about crystals, you get really particular, right? When you know about any subject, you get particular about what people write about it. And this book is really good, Devin. I mean, like, it's one of my favorite crystal books now. And not all of them are. I mean, and especially, I mean, I'm picky about what we carry here, right? And we're getting picky also about the witchcraft books we carry here too. I think I was telling some people, Matt, maybe one of them, we told Llewellyn, we were like, it's hard to pick. So now we're carrying some of our favorites, like Matt's book, and same with crystal books. I just don't carry all of them. So, but this one we will definitely be carrying. And
well, you got to have a good mix and something you actually agree with, you know, and it makes sense to people, and it can hit all levels of wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, you've got your culture and your stores as well, and there's a community that develops around them, and a message and work that's done. So I think it's important to have things that you jive with on your shelves with. Yeah, I think picky is good. Picky is very good.
Picky is good. Yeah. So it is a beautiful book. First of all, like, you guys, it's not just packed full of information, but I want to say this is like, does it come in hardcover? Because it should. It's gorgeous.
I wish.
Yeah, well, that's like hint to publisher. This should be in hardcover. It's an absolutely beautiful book, and I'm sure it says it in here. But who's responsible for the photographs? They're gorgeous.
Me.
Wow. So that's why you didn't say credit to, but you should have said credit. Maybe you did in here somewhere, but credit to Devin Hunter. They're beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, I tried to like drop it a little bit in the beginning and just not make a big thing out of it, but it was a lot of work, and so I thank you for noticing.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if Matt can. I don't know if y'all can see, but look at some of these. I mean, those are not easy pictures to get. That's a beautiful piece of fluorite. I mean, the picture, it's just a gorgeous book. I love this picture right here where you just throw them all together. I love that picture, but all of them, just the detail. You didn't lose the detail of how pretty the crystal was in the photograph.
Yeah, and
Roger,
it's not easy because we've been working on a project ourselves, and I've been doing the photography for the crystals, and you got to get the light just right. You got to make sure there's no reflection because some metallic style crystals are really super shiny crystals. It was actually, I was looking in one of them and I was like, what the hell is that orange in that black crystal? And I'm trying to figure out why is there orange in it? Well, my tripod had an orange ring on the top where you can adjust it.
You thought it was some
So I had to
inclusion
take,
or something.
yeah, I thought it was something in it, and I got to looking. Well, I had to take black graph tape, and wrap it around to black everything out.
Yeah,
You've
it's
got to
hard.
really look at it, every little detail to really get the pictures that sharp.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a beautiful book that is a great read, but is also just a beautiful book. It should be in hardcover, in my opinion, because I would love to put this one on our coffee table when our coffee table gets
When
put
it gets
back. You guys, we
back
had a
up.
flood, and so we have to redo
Yeah,
everything.
we have
in
a major remodel
Cool.
going on at the house
Yeah.
because of the flood from the rain like 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh goodness.
So when you're talking about crystals, a lot of times people like to say, "Oh, it's the woo-woo crystals, for woo-woo people and all," but it's not. What do you? What
more
type
than
of?
that.
It's more than just people that think it's for woo-woo. What do you consider that?
I, honestly, it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? So I think if you are someone who wants love and light out of everything, that's what you're going to find, or you're going to find the opposite depending on where you're at. And if you're somebody who, like me, I'm primarily a medium. That's where everything starts for me, and so everything's really always going to funnel back through those psychic senses and those experiences. So my work with crystals is really reflective of that. And as an animist as well, somebody who believes there's an indwelling spirit and energy inside of everything, crystals are some of the best examples of that, and best
Exactly.
examples of where we can find those partnerships and work with them. So, I think you kind of learned that if you aren't necessarily a love and light person, that you would, if you are leaning in on your natural intuition and instinct, you can find the crystals are helpful in all kinds of different ways. So I think it's really about what you're looking for.
I love how you brought up the animus, because one of the things you say in your book is that you believe, this isn't an exact quote, but a summation of it. You believe that spiritual entities are associated with stones. I agree with that completely. And then you go, so I believe that too. So think of it as, I usually say, just like animals. There is an overriding wolf, but then there's each individual wolf, right, that we get to know. And so we may have overriding rose quartz, but then each rose quartz has an entity, and I think that's what you were saying. But you said, and you can explain it, that there's two types particularly that you talk about in your book. Could you tell I think it's the angelic and the deva and the dragons. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So when I started working with crystals and I started looking at books, everybody was talking about the spiritual entity related, or spiritual energies related, or maybe we want to say consciousness related to spirits. They would refer to them as deva, which is an Eastern term that we totally messed up a little bit. And the closest we can kind of say would be like angel. Like they're very similar in how we might approach angels and devas. They're pretty similar. But I found that to be very soft, and I would find very, like, other stones, for example, we'll just say obsidian's a great example. Obsidian doesn't give you love and light, high vibes. It gives you fire and fierce, right? And so when I was a young boy, I was really lucky to grow up in an area where we had a lot of burial mounds, and we had a lot of interesting geological things that went on. I'm from the Ohio River Valley. And so we would go, and if you go far enough into the woods, you're going to find a weird ravine that has odd energy with all this exposed limestone. And you'd find the natives and the locals would have these legends and these stories around these areas. And if we compare it to other things that are going on in cultures around the world, we have this idea of dragons that pop up and ley lines, and how dragons follow ley lines. Well, it just so happens to be that a lot of crystal veins are along ley lines. And so I got really curious, and I started scratching at that a little bit more. And I very quickly found that dragon energy in a very realistic way for me is present in crystals, and it tends to be, it's not the love and light vibe. It isn't the high light energy vibe. It is definitely the more aggressive energies of the earth, and that is something that was cool and weird, and I didn't really want to go there, at first, because I'm like, dragons, but then I was like, dragons, this is so cool, and jumped in and and then found there to be some potent magic there. And so I felt the need to write about it in the book.
Yeah. I love how you did that. And thanks and you, throughout the book, there are several exercises where you, I don't know if that's the word you use, exercises, but several exercises where you bring in the dragon and show in the crystal, and show people different ways to work with that. So that's another thing I like. I like exercises in books, probably because I put them in mine.
Yeah.
But I like being able to take it and then really actually, because people, even in classes, they'll say, okay, that's great that crystal means the obsidian, which is volcanic glass, but we call it a crystal, that you're telling me maybe work with that, but tell me exactly how. And, for me, maybe when not to, exactly, because of the shadow that might come up that you're not ready to deal with, right? But so I really, really liked how you did that in the book.
Yeah. So, hey, y'all had your own crystal store and everything, and everybody wants to start out collecting crystals, and obviously you can't just go out and buy every single one at one time, but what would you recommend for a new witch starting out, wanting to get into more of the crystal magic? What crystals would you tell them to start with?
So it depends on what experience you want to have. But I tell people, if you're brand new and you just want to feel things out and get a hang of what exactly it is we're talking about with this energy stuff, and how does that relate to your spells, then I say just approach the quartz family. The quartz family is huge, and it is very friendly, and it loves to be played with, and it loves to be talked to, and it loves energy and all that stuff. So that's quartz, rose quartz, citrine, amethyst, smoky quartz, and then about 150 others that are derived from quartz. But so quartz is really fun to play with, and anything that has a quartz matrix is probably going to be easy to approach as well. And so anything in any quartz for the noobs, it's a beautiful thing. And I also tell people, when you're approaching a new art or a new practice, go back to the quartz and practice those things, whether it's new meditation or it's a new technique for astral travel or any of that stuff. Go back and work with quartz, because it's so foundational and it's so helpful for all of those things. So if you're approaching anything with a beginner mind, work with a piece of quartz. It's going to love you. But if you want things that are a little bit more, we'll say, energetic, and you want to feel like a lot of the times I hear people saying, well, I just don't feel the energy off the stone. And so for people who are looking for things like that, then I usually tend to show them like topaz. Of course, I'll show them moldavite, just because it's almost a guaranteed buzz, but also feldspars. So I find moonstones, especially black and green moonstone, tend to be really, really jivey with energy. And of course, any of the labradorites that are gonna show off all kinds of stuff. But you're also gonna feel that, and I usually feel that in a very palpable way. And so I tend to steer people towards those things. And all of those stones are also just excellent partners and allies in magic. So I would start there.
What about what do people not want to start with? The ones that needs to be a little bit more advanced before they really start working with it.
Or do you believe that's true?
I think there's certain stones that are going to burn you out. I mean, just in general, like moldavite's a good one. And I thought this was the silliest thing. And I until I would meet these people that were wearing moldavite and then were walking around like they were drug out. I mean, just like ticking on something and just really nervous all the time. And I was like, what is going on with you? And they just happened to be in a place in their practice where they were working with moldavite a lot. And I could see the shift that was going on. And that wasn't always a healthy shift. And what I like to think about with crystals is essentially they're vitamins for your energy body, and the way that we would take vitamins for our physical body. And so you want to be aware that not all vitamins are good for you, and not all vitamins are something that you even necessarily need. So a lot of the times I think the problems that people have with syncing up with crystals are more to do with the user being in a certain place where that energy is aggressive to them or it doesn't feel good to them, or maybe just in general, your composition is very different than what that stone's composition is, and you're just not meant to be friends. And that's okay too.
Yeah, that's okay.
I think most of the time the dangerous stuff is when people force themselves into working with the stone because it's the stone that's supposed to fix this, or it's the stone that's supposed to do this, and it ends up being impacting them in negative ways, essentially, just because of where they're at in their life and where they're at with their work. But I don't think stones are inherently good or evil or one or the other, but I do think people are very different from each other, and I think that we're going to have different interactions and different responses to the crystal's energy.
I agree with that.
And we see that a lot in the store. People come in, it's even Motivite. They're like, I want to feel Motivite, because obviously TikTok, and they see it and want to come experience it. But yeah, occasionally you get somebody and they can't handle it, the energy coming off of it. And yeah, so we do get
and
that.
Covalite is one
Covalite's
that
a
you
good
can
one,
really
yeah.
feel. We like, and that is, if you guys have that in your garage, let us know, because that is, I have a big hunk on my desk, and one of the people
It's
in
been hard for me
Tucson
to
said,
find a
"Would
little
you
bit."
sell that to me so I can?" And I was like, "No, it's been hard, very difficult to find." And of course, that goes supply and demand, and a lot of people want to know sometimes why crystals are unavailable. It could be that there's a war going on, and sadly, or they just tell the story about the blue lace agate.
Oh yeah, because which blue lace agate comes from South Africa, right? So
Well, some of it, yeah.
most of it. But when we were in Denver, well, first of all, they were mining and started mining kind of backwards and created
Namibia, I can't ever say it.
And so they've created a space where it's very easily collapsible now, the mine. So, they stopped mining because it's not cost effective anymore. But when we were in Denver 2 months ago, Denver at the Denver show, there's a new crystal out from China. They're marketing as blue lace agate that is not blue lace agate. It's being mined. But there was one guy that had the exact same thing, and it was called Blue Storm agate. He just put a different name on it. And of course, it was priced like any other agate, where everybody else was selling the exact same thing for like 4 times the price.
And we met the guys who owned the place in Namibia. It was actually the guy's father, but then he was pretty young. He took over. Him and his partner took over.
They're in Tucson. We're talking
because I'm sure you know this, but it got so deep. Telling the listeners, they had dug so deep and long in that trench that Namibia, actually the government said stop. And we were like, how much? And so we bought almost everything off their table. But because I called around and I said, is this true? Because sometimes you'll have rumors. But back to this is kind of going backwards a little bit, where we talk about when we first pick a stone. And you already mentioned that sometimes people don't feel it and things like that. But there's also other things that we are told sometimes in all the books to do, like clearing, cleansing, different things. But I'm going to ask you about one, and I'll tell you what I think first, because most people don't agree with me. But you sort of did in your book, sort of. It's about programming stones. So, and I love how you put it in the book, because my thing with programming them is that they're beings. So, if I would not want to program you, Devin, I would Roger.
Tries that all the time.
And maybe Matt. No, but it's about you're programming an entity. So why does it have to be programmed if it already has its own signature? And so I don't typically program people or entities. And you touched on it in your book. You didn't say it in exactly that way, but what do you think about that, and how would you say it?
So I'm actually right in the middle of recording a bunch of lectures with Nicholas Pearson. We're doing a crystal magic boot camp that starts next month, and we were just talking about this and add like super dozy of it was so I'm totally loaded for this one. It's kind of interesting. So there are certain stones that they just absorb the natural ambient psychic energy of an area. In fact, most stones do, which is why you can feel the difference between a Brazilian amethyst and an amethyst that comes out of China, right? You can feel the difference. Same chemical, same everything there, but something's different. It's where they come from.
Right.
And so crystals can absorb ambient energy super easy. A lot of the times when people have like cursed stones in their family, like necklaces and things like that, it just absorbed ambient energy, and it radiates that. So it was programmed essentially by the ambient energy to do what it's doing. But its natural default is to do its own thing, just like my natural default is to go do my own thing. And so I think we run into this idea that crystals are somehow like little batteries that you can tell what to do, and then they're just going to go and do it. And it doesn't work like that, because as you said, they are their own beings. I mean, there is a consciousness behind them. And if you spend more than like 5 minutes like really sitting down with a stone and just asking a question and getting a response, you start to realize, oh, there really is something very odd going on. And so to me, that denotes consciousness. And I say, okay, so I think this stone is conscious. I can't program it to do something like run a computer program. Like that's like a lot of people try to approach it that way.
Right.
I even try to explain it a little bit that way as best I can without getting too nuts.
You did a great job, I thought. The overlay of you said the software, I don't know what you said exactly, but you did a great job of explaining it, I thought.
Yeah, so we've got our hardware, and then you've got the software that basically tells the hardware what to do. But eventually, and so that's what we're doing when we program. We're essentially installing software onto the hardware. But again, it has a vibration naturally, and naturally that should always, unless there's some big event that happens, that should always reset to whatever its natural vibration is, just regardless. So you can have a stone that sits out, like we would have crystals. People would, we had huge showroom full of crystals. People would come in and, they pick up a stone. This is my stone. I love this stone. I had a dream about this stone. This stone is my stone. And then they walk around and then they find another crystal and they pick that one up. This is the one I had a dream about, right? So, but for that 5 minutes, they were just holding that stone and telling it was theirs, and they just programmed that stone, right? It wasn't a very functioning program, but it was a program that was installed. You put it back, and eventually, if you weren't to do anything, it would reset itself, right? It's just going to go back to its natural default. So, there's something true to just acknowledging that, like somebody who's been around stones a lot and seeing this kind of stuff, knowing, okay, that's okay. But then there's also just the ambient energy of the store. So we would cleanse the store just because you get a lot of traffic and a lot of things coming in and out. But that took, my stones weren't necessarily a problem in that same way. Sometimes people would come in and there is a heavy energy there, and the stones would feel like they were having a negative response to it. So I would cleanse and things like that. But I don't think I think people have this idea that they can just like it's a robot or something and it takes commands, and it's not like that. And they're not our slaves. I mean, there are stones that I have moved mountains with in my life that if somebody else has picked up to use in magic, because I'm like, well, this is a really powerful whatever, and they'll use it and go, I didn't get anything out of it. The stone didn't like them. It's not going to do it. But for me, it moved literally mountains, So it really is about, more than anything, in my opinion, partnership, because it gets back to that idea that we are working with, not working, against or working on, that these are allies and partners in magic.
Exactly.
And just as a metaphysician, like outside of witchcraft and all of those things, I just think as a person who is trying to move forward in life and trying to keep it all together and be strong when you need to be strong and be soft when you need to be soft, I think crystals are a fantastic ally and partner just to help you get through the day. Like I said, it's supplemental energy, but eventually that supplemental energy will turn into a friendship, and it'll turn into conversations kind of back and forth. And it all sounds weird. I mean, I'm perfectly aware that I sound like a nut job sometimes.
Not to us, but I agree with you.
But there's something there, right? So I think people tend to program with the idea that they can create a little servitor, and that's not a crystal's vibe at all.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I really loved it it's you guys that when you get the book, and you will right after the show, you can order it from Soultopia, right?
Not yet.
Well, they can pre-order. But it's under the programming part. You guys, I can't remember what page. I didn't memorize it, but it was interesting to me, because the other thing that a lot of people will talk about, and you mentioned your stores, and y'all used to cleanse the store. I like that too, because I can't take every one of my crystals out and give them a bath under the moonlight. So we cleanse our store, but we also, moonlight can go through. I mean, it can permeate things too. And so, we'll have even moon ceremonies when it's like 120 degrees in Texas. We may have them inside, because it's another thing where I believe that energy, well, everything's energy, but that energy can come through. And of course, we love the ritual of taking some stones outside, but it's for the cleansing of the stone, right? But there's other ways to do that. And those are all talked about in the book. But thank you for that. You really do explain it, I think, the best I've seen it explained about the programming. Because most people, it feels like in a lot of books, and I've said this a lot in crystal books, that it's just, they're just, I don't want to use the word plagiarism, but I just said it. There's a lot of crystal books that say the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I mean, right? If anybody's read them, they know they do. And could that be that that's the universal consciousness of the crystal? Absolutely, it could be. But it could be that somebody's just repeating, and you don't do that. So, and I noticed that right away because I read, well, people now read the books that come in the store, but I especially look at crystal ones because I'm so, and going back to the whole love and light thing, the reason I said that, and Roger said like, woo woo. I actually had, do you see what I had under there on that question before that? I had the word foo foo.
Oh, yeah, foo foo. I was like, because I was trying to figure out what the hell is she talking about.
I don't know if I'm going to use foo foo.
But
people would assume, because I loved crystals, that, you're a beginner in your path of spirituality. If you like crystals, they kind of imply that. And I don't agree with that at all. And I love how you're tying it in to use for the modern witch in your book. And I'm assuming you don't agree with that, but have you ever heard that? It's like, crystals are sort of the beginning. And I'm like, who are you to say? I mean, their path is, like you said, everybody's on a different path.
It's very easy for people to dismiss things I mean, sometimes it's just true. Like, I grew up in the Midwest. There were not rock shops. It was super hard to find a stone anywhere. I mean, just to be honest with you. Yeah. And so, I mean, it really wasn't until I got older that I got to go to a rock shop and check things out. And I can understand that there's like an access thing. And I think, at least from my experience with some of my teachers, where there's this idea that you don't need physical things to be spiritual, and that the more spiritual you are, the less physical things you need. And so why would you need a crystal? And I get all that, but it's not about that. It's about signing up to go on a ride, right? And so you're going to get that crystal, you're going to go have a bunch of experiences, and you're going to go on this ride, and hopefully it takes you somewhere great and amazing. And that's the goal always. But I think there's this idea that because it's a physical thing, that it's not spiritual. Whereas I kind of look at it very like the exact opposite. I look at it like crystals are like spiritual things that are physical. And so it's all in how you approach it. But I definitely know what you're talking about with that. There's some dismissiveness when it comes to it. And I'm like, hey, just because you have never sat down with a 20-pound generator quartz doesn't mean that a 20-pound generator quartz isn't going to rock everyone's socks.
Exactly. I'm going to kind of interrupt the flow to talk about one of my favorite things.
Oh, yeah.
I use. You guys, it's been on here. I don't know. We've had it on a couple shows, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just looking at it and saying we hadn't acknowledged it yet. How do you pronounce it? Is it Datura? How do you pronounce
Datura?
Datura. Thank you. So Datura, and I ordered this online. And when I got it, there was these promotional materials, like not promotional, but stuff about Matt and you. And I was like, I got all confused. I was like, who did I order this from? And so I want to give credit, you guys, because this is, and talk to Chaz about it. This is one of my favorite things now.
It actually is.
I love it.
I will tell you now, things come to the house, and it might be a day or two before she actually opens it. This hit the door. She was opening it before she could get it in the house.
I think I was upset because you'd put it somewhere, and then I found it. I was like, what? I wanted that. But I saw it. I think it was Jen Sankey, and I saw her using it, and I was like, I'm getting that. And then I found out it was y'all's. So where can people get this if they want it?
You can go to datoratrading.com. You can find it there. You can also go to carnavalia.com. And so that's a work of Chaz.
Yeah.
He is incredible. He's got the mind of, if you were to take somebody who tinkers away at just little things here and there, and you give them a magical person's brain, you get Chaz. And so he's super into everything and anything. And he has made a study out of divination for about 30 years.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
he started with spirit boards and talking boards, and then he evolved into crystals and now he's doing these spinning wheels, and he did this amazing thing that's based off of an old, from like I want to say the early 19th century, this divination system called the Kabbalah. And it's this amazing thing. It has nothing to do with Kabbalah, but it was just called the Kabbalah because, back then they'd use whatever words because it was fancy and it fit.
Yeah.
But he's in this really amazing creative space. It's just incredible to watch, where he's obviously inspired by the standards like tarot and things like that, but then how do we flip that on its side, and how could I make a thing out of it? And so he's a brilliant, mad genius, and it's so inspiring to be around, like, just to be honest with you.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure if we weren't going to spin it, I want to spin it.
She wants to spin it.
But
You should spin it.
spin it. Did you see me spin it before the show, right when the show was starting? You spin it, Roger. I'll hold it. Don't spin it off the thing, though. And you read straight down from this.
It is on the
wherever that marker is.
The High Priestess.
It's on the High Priest. Oh,
All right.
okay.
Yep.
There we go.
All right.
So,
Hold on to that.
and so on Tarot Takeaways that I have on Friday, on Instagram, I spin this every time now. But it's funny because I need your help.
Because she's
on
an
that
Instagram
show.
based.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You've watched it. I'm sure you know I need your help on that. But it's Instagram, and it's the way I frame it. It's like this. So I have to hold it. Then I sort of spin it. And Roger doesn't know, but I'll go, okay, I'm going to spin it. Let's pick a thing. And only the majors, because right now we're into, I think this week's 8 of Wands. But, and if I spin the Hierophant or whatever, then everybody listening live gets a prize. Did you know I've done that? And then I'm spinning.
That'll be the day she's got like 300 people listening.
Then I'm spinning it. Then I'm spinning. A lot of people watch that afterwards, because it's kind of during the lunch hour. But it's so funny because I spin it, and then right as I'm spinning it, I'm wanting people to win, but all I'm thinking about is Roger yelling at me. 300 people. So, but the first time I ever used it, I wrote the thing on the back, and I said, I didn't spin it. I don't know how I did it, but I wrote it something, and somebody won. But I
Bree.
picked. Huh?
Yeah, Bree
Oh,
won.
somebody that worked for us won. Yeah. And so, and they get to win. Yes. So anyway, I love using it. So and it was great. That's another reason why you should post just anyone, if you use people's items or their cards or their books, always give credit when you use them, because Jen did that, and that's how I got it. So just a little side note. And one thing before we move on, my little ADD brain here thought about, I read somewhere that, and I'm not going to have the story straight, but something, I think it's maybe witches, I don't know if it's the modern witch or from a long time ago, but that they would alternate or have jet and amber on a necklace. Is that something? Or
Yeah.
am I close to what
So
it said?
Oh, I know. Oh, this is a thing. Oh, you stepped on to some.
Did I
witch
step on
stuff.
something? Okay, I did.
You stepped onto some
well,
stuff.
not
No, it's
smart
okay.
enough
No,
to
it's
know
not
I
that.
did.
Yeah, it's fine. So traditionally, in Wiccan covens that derive from Gerald Gardner's Wicca, if you are a third degree high priest or priestess, you're supposed to wear amber and jet, and alternating amber and jet. And there's a lot of, I've heard all kinds of things, from it being life and death. If you think of amber being the sap of the tree, like the blood, and then, the jet being the petrified burnt wood. So all that makes sense. But nobody knows where it comes from. And I was stumbling, there's this book written by Leland called Gypsy Magic and Sorcery. And if you stumble through it, you will find this tiny little passage that is about the Shivani, the Shivano, wearing amber and jet necklaces to mark them as basically witches in their community. And we know that Leland and Cunningham, or not Cunningham, Scott Cunningham. Scott Cunningham had nothing to do with it. We know that Leland and Gardner they were at the very least, Gardner was influenced by Leland, and Leland definitely had his hands in a lot of interesting things. So the only way that because I've done so much looking into this, let me tell you, but the only way I can see where that worked its way into witch lore is actually from that. So it makes total sense, you know, but yeah, so it's more than likely, it's definitely probably an old gypsy Eastern European thing that got picked up and absorbed into Wicca.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I wonder, I knew I'd read it somewhere, but I didn't read it where you read it, where you found it. I read it, you know, just on somebody repeating it, I'm sure. Like I was talking about earlier, how people repeat things. So you talk about in your book, you explain what a correspondence is in your book, and then you have one for each crystal. I love that part of the book. Okay, so one of the correspondences you have is temperament. Could you explain what you mean by that? And I'm going to add, because I love the approach, underline the word love. I love that approach. So could you explain that to our listeners?
Yeah. So traditionally, when in metaphysics, we often are talking about a bunch of different personality traits that something might have, and how those personality traits are associated or connected to something else, and we call those correspondences. And a lot of the times, because of the way that old school metaphysics and occultism used to work, we would refer to what I'm referring to as temperament as gender. And it would be masculine or feminine or male or female. And the idea with this was that masculine energies were projective, they were stronger, they were more forceful, whereas feminine energies were supposed to be receptive and more passive. And what I found with this, especially, I mean, all you need to do is get some Aries friends who are females, and then all that goes right out the window, you know, and you get some male friends who are Cancers, and all that goes right out the window. And so none of that ever fit well with me. And I would find myself getting into these discussions, and people were getting hung up on the wrong stuff. Like they are not talking about what you think they're talking about. Like it's just not even close. So as a mystic myself, and somebody who cares about our breadth of understanding and the depth of understanding that we have with topics, I thought it was really important to just change that language a little bit to actually address what we're talking about, which is the temperament that something has. Is it aggressive or is it passive? Is it projective or is it receptive? And so for me, I use the terms projective and receptive, and that's just so that we don't have to talk about the dumb stuff that it doesn't even matter and we're not talking about at all, because the terminology didn't evolve. And so this is my attempt in evolving the terminology just a little bit so that we can actually talk about what we're talking about.
I think you did a great job, and I think it's something that I'll always say, but it's, you know, it's like never came up with the word. So hopefully we'll latch onto this explanation in the word, because when I read it, I was like, I love this. This is what I totally believe. You know, it's because it's just like you said, it's so easily debunked. And just for me as a female, just everybody, that whole, this is where you're saying you don't want people to go, is the fact that, oh, they're submissive, it's receptive, it's this, it's that. And, you know, in these days, it's just better to use another word, just so we don't have to get caught up in all of that. So thank you for that. I love also the tarot correspondences. I get, so that would be a correspondence too, right? How you use something with something seemingly unrelated. And how did you come up with? I know you know tarot, but how did you come up with your own, or was this what typically is the association of between a tarot card and a crystal?
Yeah, so there were a lot of correspondence. So originally the correspondence section was twice as long, like for each stone, and then I cut them down into half because I love correspondences.
Book 2.
And it's just a fantastic thing. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. I told myself I was never going to write a crystal book, and then here we are. And then I told myself I was going to write a plant book, and that's what I'm doing now. But so to circle back through the for me, I think it's really important to just kind of keep in mind that as you are developing your practice in general, regardless of where you're going with it, that you're listening to yourself, you're following your own intuition, you're allowing your practice to build on those things. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in some of the details about things and skip over the important bit, like we were just kind of talking a little bit about. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I got distracted by book talk, but the idea essentially behind the practice that, you know what, I just lost your question. It went right out my head.
I do that all the time
Would you
too.
replace that for me?
I do it all the time too. So you answered it except for the tarot part. The tarot part. So with that particular correspondence, how did you come up with those correspondences?
I asked the cards, actually. So I, similarly to how we work with, we're talking about each stone having consciousness and energy behind it. I also have this very firm belief that each of the tarot cards, in addition to the archetypical stuff that we could totally get lost in for days and days, each of the cards also has a consciousness behind it because so many people work with them. So just as a psychic thing, if we hold up the Empress card, everybody in our type of crowd is going to know what that card means. And if you think about how many people read tarot and you think about how many people have ever had an experience with tarot, each of those cards is kind of like their own little universe, right? So in doing the work that I was doing with each of the stones, I realized for me, I use tarot for a lot of things. It's like my shortcut for just about anything as a psychic. But I also use stones a lot to accent that and to help with that process. So I started asking my tarot cards when 15 years ago, what stone do you resonate with? And what stone carries your, so that if I'm trying to give you to a client, I'm not going to hand my client that card I'm using that's going to go back in my deck, but I could hand them a stone. And that is where that all started. And so it really came from asking the cards what they wanted. And then, sometimes the stone would be like, no, I'm not sometimes that totally happened. Don't get me wrong. But for the most part, it was just asking the cards in that role as a reader.
I love that. So once again, it's original with you, and it may correspond with some other people's opinions but again, it's. Yeah, what?
Well, I was going to say, because when we started, we made, the beaded bracelets. That's how we started everything. And we have a whole line of bracelets based off of the crystals with the tarot. And so I saw that and I was like, you know what? I want to go back through and I want to kind of look at your book compared to the bracelets. So we did that 10, 12 years ago, putting it together.
That'd be awesome.
And I was like, I was like, because I was looking at a couple of them, I said, yeah, we used that bead on that. I remember using the bead on that particular card. So I won't go through the rest of them. I just haven't had time to go through the whole thing yet.
It's interesting that Scott Cunningham's name kind of, came out of your mouth and you were like, no, that wasn't associated. But with crystals, I know Matt's working with Christine. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just did. But on the book's public, I think. Well, tell about the crystals and what Scott used to wear.
So Scott used to wear a lot of natural, beaded necklaces, which had wood or amber, things like that. So his sister, Christine, wants us to actually be the official, make an official bracelet to honor Scott. And so that everybody will be able to order it through us. And it will have wood and amber, a couple other crystals into it that were kind of his thing. So we're actually in the process right now of doing that.
To keep the price right. So it may be amber light, copal, or even that's too, so we had to talk to her about that. But it was interesting that it just kind of came up because she had sent me pictures and it was interesting. His necklace and his bracelet were both wood. I think we're going to maybe do sandalwood and amber. There's amber in it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, Scott did in his Crystal Gem and Metal Magic, he does have a crystal tarot, but it's not this. It's very different. Although it was my inspiration for the part in the book that's all about divination, where it's about the draw system for the stones. So when you get to that part, if you did read Scott Cunningham's Crystal Gem and Metal Magic, then that part's probably going to be like, oh, okay.
That's cool.
It's
And
a
I
good
didn't even
person
know
to
I
refer
actually had a
to, though, right?
reader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a reader show this to me at a conference years and like I want to say 20 years ago, and I thought I was getting this like sacred magic or the sacred wisdom being drawn down by this priestess in the moment. I'm like, oh my god, she just taught me this hidden system, and oh, it's so cool. And then I get home. For years, I thought that I had the goods, right? And then I go to sit down to write this book, and I'm like, no. I know I read this something like this somewhere, and then Matt hands me Cunningham's book. He's like, "Yeah, it's right here." I'm like, "God darn it!" So for years, I thought I had this sacred thing that was passed. No, it was. She just took Scott's stuff, and then But anyway, so that part's in there. But it's a fun connection. I feel like the book has to his book, and so I just kind of like that. But I have to mention that anytime his name comes up and the book comes up, I'm like, hey.
Yeah, super cool.
So this, just so people listening know, some of the other correspondences are, you would know this better than me. But I'll read it. Fluorite's one of my favorite crystals because for me, having a cubic internal structure, it calms me down, and I have very, very bad ADHD, adult ADHD. And so, so you have the main deposits, vibrational keywords, then you have the cleansing method, the temperament, which with fluorite, what do you guys think it would be, people listening, and later? I'll let them look that up. We're not going to tell them. And then, or get the book. Light ray, element, planet, zodiac sign, botanical ally, tarot card, which is the Four of Swords for fluorite. Physical healing, mental healing, spiritual healing, and an affirmation. So for each of the crystals, you give those, and I love that. So those correspondences. But I especially loved the explanation for temperament. Always read. I don't know if it was in the introduction, Devin, or not, but I'll tell people I always read the introduction to books. I think people, if you read books and you skip the introduction, you're making in most cases, I think a pretty big mistake, for lack of a better word. I would encourage people to read the introduction because you learn so much about that, about what the author thinks and the way they're doing things and the way they're laying out the book and the best way to use it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
All right, so we are doing a giveaway tonight, guys. So just while we are, since we're talking about crystals tonight, I went through and I grabbed 10 of these little coin flat crystals, 10 different ones. So it's about $50 worth of crystals here to give away tonight.
Thank you.
In a little baggie. And so what our question tonight, and I am watching here on the Soultopia page, we were talking about how beautiful the pictures are in the book, and we talked about who actually did the photography for the book. Tell us who did the photography for the book, and that's who wins the crystals. First one that answers.
And what you watch.
And while we're watching, I'm going to ask a question too. The other part I saw in there that jumped out was you talked about crystal mapping and crystal grids. So when you're talking to somebody new and they're like mapping crystal grid, what is it? What am I doing here? What is this? And
are they the same or are they different?
So I mean, they essentially, I guess they are. I think in the fundamentals, it's all there. We're talking about laying stones down in a certain pattern. Gridding usually is the idea of complex shapes and things being added on top of each other. We usually think of something very very geometric and quantifiable in that kind of a way. Whereas if we're just talking about gridding in general, which is the laying on of stones, that's or mapping in general rather, that's a very intuitive process where you can have somebody laying down on a massage table and you're laying stones on their chakras. That's a form of mapping. We wouldn't call it a grid, but we definitely would say these stones are interacting. They're doing something. They're connected. They're circuited. But we wouldn't necessarily call that a crystal grid. But it's still the same concept, still the same idea. And so I delineate the two really based on that. When do we start adding extra structure? When do we start making it super complicated? And then when you do make it complicated, we can, the grids can be multiple grids on top of each other, and it can be a very intense process. But I think of one being more intuitive and natural, and then one being more direct and controlled.
No, I agree. That's good. I agree with that. Another thing that I like in this book is when you do suggest stones. Sometimes you'll say your favorite stone for doing certain exercises or crystal dragon protection, right? For 5 pieces of your favorite stone, a piece of white. My point being, you also, if you say exactly what crystals to use, you don't say like you need to go buy 35 rose quartz or something like that. They're reasonable numbers for people who can't afford to go buy that many crystals to do. There's a lot of books, and I will, and I know she's passed, and I'm not trying to attack, but Judy Hall, in some of those books, it'd be and also a lot of her books, the stones that she would recommend, and people come in to get, are extreme or really expensive. So I liked to hear how, just for everybody listening, it's another reason to get it, because I used to sort of say, just throw the books away when they tell you how many to buy, because that put people off, because, you know, I'm selling you a book, and you're on top of that, you got to go get 30 rose quartz and 20 double terminated crystal points, or so I like that too.
So we do have a winner.
We have a
Actually,
winner?
we had a lot of people with the correct answer too. It was like they were firing off. It was Nikki. So
Nikki was first.
Nikki was first. Winner chicken dinner.
But thank you everybody for paying attention.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
there's a
They
lot
were
of people
paying
answered
attention.
that. They were paying attention for sure.
So if, even though you didn't give yourself enough credit in the book for that, now it's out there, and they answered it, and they all know. This was something that I'm not sure. Roger, can you hold up Matt's new book?
This right here.
All right. So we have Matt's
There's Matt's new book.
Psychic Witch that everybody
We
knows
had like
about.
2 cases of those. So we sold a bunch of them, obviously, at Newt's, but we got them back. They have them over in the warehouse now to get them out.
But I'm not. Here we go. So this exercise, can y'all see? It's Crystal Moth Spirit Guide Sigil Working. Explain what moths mean to you, to others maybe, that maybe it's something that's a general thing, or to you guys specifically, or what about moths?
Good eye. Good eye. Good keen observation
Thank
skills.
you.
So moths are a big deal in our tradition of sacred fires, and Matt was through before we got together. He went through all of the stuff and did all. So he has his own take on things, of course, but the butterfly and the moth are very important to us. They're symbols of metamorphosis and change and shape-shifting, and those things are core witchcraft values. And so the moth especially is a beautiful thing that is related to the spirit world, and the fact that it goes away during the daytime and then comes out at night is a very important thing for revealing shadows and revealing secrets. And so we work a lot with moth as a teaching spirit, as an ally in that way, to just understand the unseen world. And so for many, many moons, moth has been a symbol of one of my spirit guides, and specifically the one that I work with a lot to work, develop magic and magic technologies and techniques and things like that. And very quickly started to realize that my spirit guide would pop up, and then my other spirit guides would get my attention by a moth, because that was the only thing that was working. Moths and owls. And Matt had a very similar things going on in his life. And so that was a really cool confirmation as we were working on the same material, but in our own lives. And moth just has this way of making it into everything, I have to say. Moth is kind of sneaky like that. But yeah, so the Crystal Moth Spirit Guide working actually started off as something I did for my Patreon subscribers, believe it or not. I made sigil pins that they could wear as part of a working to help them better understand their spirit guide and better work with their spirit guide. And so I made these pins and I sent them out to everybody. And the sigil that we made the pin out of is the sigil that's in the book. And so it was just this special thing. And I thought, you know what? I can't write this crystal book. I actually sent in the original draft. It didn't have it in it. The final draft, I went through hurriedly one night at 2 a.m. because I had this realization something was missing from the book, and it was this. And so I was like, how could I do this and betray Crystal Moth like that? It was this whole thing. So But good on you for noticing.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of those little things that he and I both sneak it into everything we can. But yeah,
And that's really, I thought that was really cool. And I was like, I want the explanation. So thank you for that. Now I know the hidden secrets, and so does everybody else listening,
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Did you ask Devin if,
I did not. I forgot.
okay, so how much time do we?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. So, are you willing for our listeners to be a part of, and I'm going to use crystal cards, so you could just use bibliomancy with your book if you wanted to, or cards, but we usually do a closing reading
Sure.
for the rest of the week. So, will you participate? You can read with whatever
Yeah, I'd
you
love
want
to.
to. I shouldn't have been telling you what to read with, but I'm going to use the Soultopia. Look at these, Devin. So this is how we mark our crystals. They're bigger cards, though. But Devin, check it out. These cards.
Oh.
So these are our Soultopia, and that's the
back.
That's our mural from our Bishop Art store on the other
And
side.
then the other side
it's
has
beautiful.
a picture with the crystal, the name, and
Yeah, but show the mural
and the mural.
that Jared Detox Davies did. Can y'all see that?
That's beautiful.
And so that's on the side of our Bishop Art store, that mural. But Matt, are you gonna participate? Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
so
let me turn my mic on.
So
Yeah,
you
sure.
guys, for everybody listening, you know the drill. If you're new, here's what we do: pick a number between 1 and 4. Stick with it. Just stick with your intention. If you don't want to, that's okay. But we always say no cheating. Stick with your crystal that you picked or your number, and we're going to pick a number between 1 through 4. And this is just a short, little reading for the week. So if you pick number 1, that is going to be Roger. No, that's going to be Matt. You ready? Yeah, you're up. So for all the number 1s.
All right. Well, yeah, for number 1s this week, again, I like to use the oblique strategies, which is just a bunch of different messages that might apply to you. And this week's is back up a few steps. What else could you have done? So for number 1s, if there is... this is referring to something in the past, so perhaps if there's something that's been weighing on you, maybe you feel like you've made a mistake or something like that, this is encouraging you to take a step back. What else could you have done? Also, perhaps even before you step forward into this week, with your plans that are laid ahead of you, back up a bit and reassess those. So I think this is a good a time for planning and reassessment of what you've been through in the past week.
You were talking to me, but I always pick number 2,
Yeah.
and our number 2 reader is going to be Devin. Devin, you're up.
Okay. I am electronically shuffling. Give me a second. It's almost done. I'm cutting now. I am picking a card. If you are number 2, this is the message that is for you. Maybe. Okay. We've got, oh, wonderful, the 2 of Wands. So in my world, what that means is decisions to be made, but mostly that come from reflection and retrospection and looking back on where you've come from, where you're headed. So that's the energy of what you're going to be dealing with this week, number 2s.
It kind of ties into number 1
A
when
little
I
bit,
think
yeah.
about that, because, for me, looking back over newts, so, and not that it's all about me, but I do pick number 2 usually. Those tie in together. So I'll be number 3. I chose one of my favorites is, and this is how I pronounce it, lepidolite. So there is a lot of, well, I'm not sure how much, but anytime something has some lithium in it, I tend to like those crystals because I need lithium. I need it to calm me down. I have anxiety, and a lot of the customers who come in our store do. And it's a beautiful crystal. So what I wrote on this card is perfect. It's perfect stone for anxiety and depression. It's a natural antidepressant. It helps you reach new spiritual heights. It's good for astral travel and transitioning. Now, I wrote these a long time ago. So what I'm getting out of that for everyone for this week is to, for those of you who have, just like I do have anxiety, it's okay to own it, but you can use tools and things to help you. I'm getting specifically, I'm going to get a little controversial right here at the end, but don't let anybody tell you what what you should or shouldn't, besides your doctor, your counselor, your therapist, do regarding the things you go through with anxiety or depression. Don't let anyone tell you about that until and to switch what you're doing in your life. And I'm specifically referring to medication and things like that. Let your doctor be your guide on that, and don't ever let anybody criticize you if that's something you need. Okay.
Very good, very good.
Wow.
All right, so I guess I'm last. So I'm actually reading with my Mystic Martian Oracle deck, and I've got it says third eye, and even though it says visions, manifesting, and meditation, actually what I'm getting is this week for you number 4s is these 2 eyes. When you're making a decision, I want you to close these 2 eyes. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to open your third eye up and really allow that energy to come into that third eye and help you make that decision. Don't, like if you're trying to decide this or that and you're like looking at it, don't do that. Close your eyes and let your mind's eye, your third eye, open up and let that energy flow in and help make those decisions. That way you get a clearer decision made for yourself, and just opening it up, okay? Don't try to depend on your own visual stimulation or anything like that. Do it through your mind's eye.
I love that.
Okay?
That's a great message.
Yes.
So, Devin, thank you so much for being on with us. Where can everyone find your book and all things Devin Hunter?
So you can find my book by checking out your favorite metaphysical retailers, like Soultopia. You should definitely check them out. But you can also find it anywhere books are sold. It is in all of the places, or it will be in all of the places. You can also go to modernwitch.com, which is like the home for all things that I'm doing. And the Crystal Magic for the Modern Witch is actually the second part of the Modern Witch series, which started as just really an homage to my community that I've built as a podcaster for over 10 years. And so it's a love letter to the listeners. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Yes. So it's one of those things. And but yeah, so definitely check out modernwitch.com. We've got all kinds of wonderful over 10 years of podcasts and videos and free classes and just about anything and everything. So just go check out modernwitch.com and you can find it all there.
That's excellent.
That's very good.
So next week we'll be here, right?
I think so. Sure.
Actually,
Allegedly.
Matt Orwin is going to be here soon. Mary's talking with him, so he will be talking about his new book, Mastering Magic. So there's a lot going on with you guys right now, and I hope to meet you soon. Matt explained. I was like, oh yeah, I met him. He's Matt was telling, it was pretty late at night. He was telling me, no, let me explain, Michelle, you don't have it down. But, and I'm like, welcome to my world, Matt. That Matt and this Roger, no, right? But Matt, is there anything else I missed for tonight?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think that's probably covers it.
We got it. We got it all.
We did it. All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys. Everyone, follow us on here's what I say. All the places. Just follow us. All the places.
Just everywhere.
Right? If you look on all the places,
SoulWhat.
we're there. So thank you, and we hope everyone has a great week.
Yep. Good night, guys.
Thanks for listening to SoulWhat, a Soultopia production. If you're intrigued, searching, or looking to schedule a reading of your very own, visit us in sunny Dallas, Texas, or visit us online at facebook.com/Soultopia Holistic Boutique. And if you like what you heard, subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting platform to be the first to hear new episodes every Tuesday at 7:30 Central.